Donald Trump is now officially the 47th president of the United States, as well as the 45th. J.D. Vance was sworn in today as the vice president of the United States, and that means Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are officially out of government. The entire ceremony in Washington is, on the one hand, a bit over the top. It's a bit melodramatic, but also it has a sort of important tradition in the United States to signify the passing of this very important power that has been accomplished through the decisions and autonomy of the American electorate. So I don't want to be too cynical about it. But there was a lot going on at this inauguration, beginning with the speech Donald Trump gave, which typically is designed to set the tone of what his next administration is going to be, what he wants the American people to understand about it and to expect. And on the one hand, Trump really evoked the standard themes that he campaigned on throughout the second term of his campaign to become the re-elected president. There weren't a great deal of surprises, but I think one of the things that surprised a lot of people, maybe even so me, was that he really avoided the sort of bromides and cliches of inaugural addresses about unity and all of that. And he unflinchingly identified the people that he believes were the cause of America's woes, even though most of them were sitting right behind him, inches away, in the frame of the camera as he spoke. I think this is one of the things, I'm not entirely sure about this, I tried to find this out. But originally, as I said, the inaugural address was going to be held at the mall, which is where the inauguration usually is. So it's outdoors. It's much more spread out. There's a lot of former presidents typically in attendance, but you don't really see them. They're kind of on the stage, but a little bit further away from the president. But because it was moved to the Capitol due to the cold weather, they were in this very tight, almost claustrophobic setting up on the stage. And so all the ex-presidents, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and also the current sitting vice president, Kamala Harris, were extremely close to where Trump was speaking. They were sitting just inches away from him, off to his left, and you could see them the entire time. And what was so amazing about it was that most of Trump's speech was devoted to unflinchingly and without any real politeness to soften it, condemning the entire bipartisan political class over the past 20 years that has essentially, in his view, come close to destroying America due to not just ineptitude, but even more so to corruption, to moral and ethical failings where they elevated the interest of their donors and themselves at the expense of everybody else in the society. And they all just sit there while he issued vicious condemnations, not only of their own policies and actions, but really of their own character. And that produced a lot of amusing moments, the most amusing of which I think came right at the beginning, where Trump followed tradition by reading the names of all of the presidents who were in attendance, as well as the vice president. The only one was Kamala Harris, who was there. But then right after he read all their names to make clear that they were present, this is what he said immediately after reading their names.
Thank you very much, everybody. Well, thank you very, very much. Vice President Vance, Speaker Johnson, Senator Thune, Chief Justice Roberts, Justices of the United States Supreme Court, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, President Biden, Vice President Harris, and my fellow citizens. The golden age of America begins right now.
So we're in a new age. That age is the golden age. And obviously the people who he just listed, who are sitting on that stage, who are governing America ostensibly for the past 20 years or 25 years, had done something other than the golden age in the United States. The golden age is not something that's been evolving. It's only beginning right now. All of those other people that he just named were people who could not deliver a golden age to the United States, but instead, according to him, delivered nothing but destruction and the collapse of the American way of life. the American industrial base, American power, all because they had zero concern about or interest in the vast majority of American citizens. They were concerned, said this critique, with the public opinion of them in European capitals and in global media. And you can certainly make a good case that that's true. It's just amazing how blunt and direct and just very harsh that very first opening was, to say, here's all these people, they're from the past, but the golden era, that doesn't include them obviously, starts right now. Now, one of the things that Trump has, I think, in his best vision when he lays out, is stuck to the ideology that not only enabled him to win against Hillary Clinton in 2016, but also destroyed the Republican field in the primary in 2015 and 2016 as well, which was an America First ideology that wasn't just rhetoric, but had a very specific ethos to it, a very specific ideological core about how this priority was supposed to manifest in all forms of policy. And it seems to me like, and I think if you talk to anybody in the Trump world, they will tell you too, that Trump is a lot more disciplined. The people around him are more serious. They came in with a very clear plan for how they're going to get a lot of this done, overcoming all the people in the administrative state and the deep state and permanent Washington who thwarted them the first time. Again, that is absolutely Trump's main objective, not just during the transition, but well before that. They were planning on how to take this behemoth of the permanent power faction in Washington and defang it. Because at the end of the day, they are unelected. They're a permanent unelected administrative state and U.S. security state that has for way too long prevented our elections from really having any significance or meaning, because you can vote for the Republican or the Democrat, and those people are going to end up ruling and doing what they want, even if it means, as happened in Trump's first presidency, overtly ignoring and overriding and even subverting the policy preferences and even orders of the person elected to give them. Here's Donald Trump in just one of those passages in which he seems very focused on rejuvenating that 2016 spirit. Here's what he said.
From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first.
It seems so odd to me that that is a political phrase at all, let alone a controversial one. It should be so foundational to American democracy that when American political leaders get elected, their paramount goal, arguably their only goal, but certainly their paramount goal, is to put the country that just elected them, the country they're duty bound to serve, the people in that country who are citizens of the country that elected them, put those people first and not prioritize the interest of global institutions or certainly foreign wars, subsidizing everybody's army. And there's a lot of policies, including the billions and billions and billions of dollars the United States spends to protect Western Europe and NATO, even though Western Europe has every ability financially to take care of itself. It's an alliance that was formed to combat a threat that no longer exists, which was Soviet communism. And it's clear that Trump believes that American interests are best formed through doing deals in other places, including in the Middle East and in Asia, and that Europe has basically become an albatross around the neck of the United States that benefits Europe and its elites and its citizens at the expense of the United States. And there's so many other examples like that. And if that actually finds expression in foreign policy, then all of these words that we're constantly fighting that have no palpable or even identifiable benefit to the United States should, in fact, fall by the wayside. Now, Trump wasn't content to just say, our government's falling apart among all these leaders that I just named who are here in both parties. He lambasted so much of what the Biden-Harris administration did right in front of them, while they could do nothing but just stand there and grimace and have blank looks on their face. It it was the kind of thing that signals that he's going to do away with the kind of protocol and niceties in Washington that I do think have been intensified far too much, where political leaders are all part of the same class, even if they're Democrats or Republicans, right or left. They never really condemn one another, except in presidential campaigns where it's sort of allowed. And then you saw Obama at the Jimmy Carter funeral giggling with President Trump, obviously based on their understanding that, oh, what you say in a campaign, I called you a Nazi or a fascist, you called me all sorts of things, but that's just all fun and games for us to create the theater that the two parties are different. We know that we're really in the same club. A lot of people around Trump are absolutely uninterested in maintaining that bipartisan club, which has led to so many different pieties and orthodoxies that are destructive being so unquestioned. And one of the ways that whoever worked on Trump's speech decided to do that was to just say exactly what they think about the failures of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, even though they were sitting closest to Trump in the most prominent seat, not during the campaign, but just after Trump vanquished them at the polls and now is taking over. Here's just part of what he said along those lines.
Fails to protect our magnificent, law-abiding American citizens, but provides sanctuary and protection for dangerous criminals, many from prisons and mental institutions that have illegally entered our country from all over the world. We have a government that has given unlimited funding to the defense of foreign borders, but refuses to defend American borders or, more importantly, its own people. Our country can no longer deliver basic services in times of emergency, as recently shown by the wonderful people of North Carolina, been treated so badly. And other states who are still suffering from a hurricane that took place many months ago.
And he goes on to say the federal government just had no capability to fight those fires, to give basic aid to the people whose lives have been upended by hurricanes. And it really is true. The United States is the most powerful and the richest country on the planet. And we've continuously seen what looks to be more like a struggling, at best, second-order power. We have oil spills in our water, or poisonous water supplies, or natural disasters where people get no help at all from the federal government. And I think the key comment Trump made there, and it remains to be seen whether any of this is followed through with, for the reason I said at the top, but the vision that he's laying out there is that what we're spending on so much is other people's countries, is other people's borders, is other people's wars. We're sending billions and billions and billions and building up our military to benefit these other people. We don't have basic infrastructure in the United States. That's a Ron Paul view that he laid out in 2008 and 2012, that the United States need not involve itself in all these wars that aren't about our direct interest. And that is the economic populism of saying, instead of sending all our money to globalized institutions and to NATO wars and foreign military bases all over the world, we should take that money and rebuild American communities. If you look at, this is just really a basic observation, but it's so striking and really true. If you look at the recent skyline and the development of architecture and buildings and exciting new construction in the Gulf states, in places in Asia like Singapore and Beijing, you look at their airports, you look at their entire infrastructure, the United States looks like a country falling apart. And we're a country that spends more money than any country by far. The question is, on what do we spend this money, and for whose benefit are we spending it? And Trump seems to be saying his main goal is to reprioritize the interests of the American people at the expense of this global elite who has benefited from the United States and its largesse and its involvement in multiple wars around the world for way too long. Now, again, I'm just telling you what Trump's vision here is. I have skepticism and doubt about the extent to which it will be carried out, because I saw similar things in 2016, but I also have some hope that this time they understand what went wrong in 2016 and have taken real steps to correct a lot of that. I'm going to be skeptical. I'm not going to celebrate until I see actions. When there's a deviation from this vision, I'm going to be the first here denouncing it. But I think it's important just to kind of analyze and break down what the most important parts of what he said was, to give you a feel for what he's trying to get the American people to see and expect. One of those passages, a pretty significant one, was about what has become a major cause on the right but not on the left. And that is the banner of free speech, which has primarily been waved in response to the effort to seize control of political discourse on the internet. Censorship that has largely, not entirely, but largely targeted not just conservative speech, but right-wing populist speech, pro-Trump speech, and leaders like Trump throughout the democratic world, the liberal elite in these ruling class institutions and democratic world capitals are frightened and petrified of a free internet. And the trend in the West, more than anything other, has been to impose a systemized, industrialized framework for recontrolling and reseizing the internet and preventing it from becoming a meaningful threat to their orthodoxies and their interests. This is something Mark Zuckerberg declared war on when, for whatever motives, trying to please Trump and appease him, partially anger over being forced to censor during COVID in a way he came to view as unethical and tyrannical. Whatever the motives, it doesn't really matter what Mark Zuckerberg's motives are, or even Donald Trump's. What matters is what they do. They are clearly saying to the rest of the world that we are going to unite and use our force to prevent the value of a free internet, one of the most important human innovations in decades, from being degraded and converted into a tool of propaganda. Here's part of what Trump said about this.
After years and years of illegal and unconstitutional federal efforts to restrict free expression, I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America.
This is probably the issue on which I'm most skeptical, but also obviously harboring the greatest hope for. So much of the campaign, so much of things that Trump's key appointees have said, so much of the Republican Party, even their allies in the Democratic Party, and so much of what Trump himself said has been about these vows to combat the evils of anti-Semitism, not anti-Black racism, not anti-Latino racism, not homophobia or transphobia or misogyny or Islamophobia or any other kind of bigotry, only this one bigotry. And we've seen incredibly disturbing assaults on free speech going back all the way to October 7th and way, way before that too, in the name of shielding Israel from criticism. The TikTok ban, in my view, I'm not going to say it was only about that. For sure, the origins, the impetus of it in 2020 was this constant attempt now to create a view of China as our existential enemy against whom we need to have a Cold War the way we did the Soviet Union. But they could never get enough votes for that until October 7th, when they just openly admitted the reason they decided to ban TikTok was because there was too much pro-Palestinian speech on there, because it was used by young Americans who had empathized with the Palestinians and turned against Israel. And they banned it to prevent that from continuing. At the same time, it's Donald Trump almost single-handedly in Washington, even against many of his own members in the Republican Party, who's doing his best to prevent a ban on TikTok. It was dark for about 24 hours over the weekend, and because it was scheduled to take effect January 19th, and due to things that Trump did, it's now back on. We'll see where that goes. I have a lot of concerns about what the Trump administration and their conservative allies, and especially the pro-Israel sector, have planned for free speech when it comes to criticizing Israel. We've seen a lot of very aggressive assaults, dozens of people fired at media and academia and politics over it. The principle is right, and I think the fact that the right has been waving this banner for so long and making so many arguments in its favor at least gives the space when they inevitably start trying to curb pro-Palestinian speech in the name of invoking the same left liberal arguments. This isn't really political speech. This is incitement to violence. This is designed to be hateful. This is bigoted against a minority group. We can't allow it, et cetera, et cetera. They banned Trump from Twitter and Facebook and banned so many of his followers by saying that's not political speech, that's incitement to violence, as we saw on January 6th. It's advocacy for an insurrection. It's bigoted against trans people and can result in violence and even genocide against, you know all the arguments. And I've been seeing a lot of invocation of those exact left liberal arguments for censorship, rejected when it comes to speech that a lot of conservatives most like, and then suddenly embraced for speech they most hate, and that includes pro-Palestinian speech. And that is going to be something that anyone who has really believed in what they've been saying about free speech and censorship, including Donald Trump, is going to really have to be monitored and have their feet held to the fire if, in the likely event that they start to pursue that, then that's going to merit a lot of pressure and condemnation, because free speech does not mean you haven't restored free speech if you're only revitalizing the right of your political allies to speak, but not your political enemies. All right, here is the one time that the prevailing dynamic in the Congress today shifted on virtually everything Trump said, virtually everything. Republicans stood and cheered, Democrats sat on their hands looking grim and angry for pretty much every single observation he made, every vow he issued, every condemnation he defended. It was that sort of standard State of the Union address where the Republicans stand up and the Democrats sit very purposefully on their hands. There was only one exception in everything Trump said, that both parties not only stood up, but jumped up and began with a sustained applause, and you'll never guess which foreign country this is about.
I'm pleased to say that as of yesterday, one day before I assumed office, the hostages in the Middle East are coming back home to their families. Thank you.
Nothing gets members of Congress off their asses. Nothing unites the bipartisan class in Washington like any mention of Israel in passing. They're petrified not to applaud the most. It's like those famous attempts to say that everybody was petrified to be the first to stop clapping in a Stalin speech. When Netanyahu comes and speaks before the Congress, not only is the reverence at its all-time high, but they're afraid not to give him a standing ovation on every pronouncement he makes, and it's sustained and long and spirited, because this is one of the main religions of Washington, is to support Israel. And it was disturbing and notable that Trump celebrated the ceasefire deal as an effort and a way to get the Israeli hostages home, which any decent person is happy to see them coming home, but zero mention of the thousands of Palestinian hostages in Israeli dungeons who are there with no trial, no charges, no trial. There's ample evidence many have been sexually abused and raped and psychologically tortured. They come out looking barely alive and coherent, whereas these hostages, and these are not the first ones, have come back to Israel looking very happy, very well cared for, and they've said that too. But that's just politics. I'm willing to give Trump some license here for a while, because whatever else is true, we've gone over this a couple of times before now. There was no chance of any meaningful sustained ceasefire for 15 months while Joe Biden was president. The Israelis made very clear they didn't take seriously anything that he said. Trump wins. He sends his very close envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, with very clear instructions to be extremely aggressive with the Israelis and demand that this war end before his inauguration. And he gets that done, and you don't have to decide if you want to celebrate. It's the Palestinian people in Gaza who are jubilant, knowing that it may not last forever, but still feeling like they got a reprieve and an end to this conflict for the moment they can return to the rubble of their homes. And it was Donald Trump who absolutely did that. So if he needs to sell it in Washington as a way to get the Israeli Jewish hostages home or the American hostages home and not acknowledge the humanity of all the people in Gaza who have been suffering as well, what matters to me more is the policy success, and that has been extremely significant and extremely notable given that Democratic Party operatives and spokespeople in the media mocked everybody throughout 2024. Muslims and Arabs and younger voters and leftist voters who said, I cannot in good conscience vote for the people who have been arming and funding the destruction of Gaza and the slaughter of tens of thousands of innocent people, including children. And they were told, you're idiots, you're morons, you're morally self-indulgent. Everybody knows that Trump is going to get in and make that destruction of Gaza so much worse, as though how it could be. And instead, before he's even in office, but clearly due to him, as every report from every region admits, he gets at least the most sustained cessation of hostilities yet, leaving all those people who mocked the idea that maybe Trump, through his unpredictability, could actually get things done, looking like the complete partisan morons that they are. Trump himself said that avoiding wars is his number one priority. As we often pointed out, Trump was the only president during his first 4 years in office who did not get the U.S. involved in a new war, either directly or as a proxy. He prides himself on that. And yes, he threatened it, he came close to it, but he believes that's how you avoid wars. And here is him saying today, in very aggressive terms, that he wants his legacy to be one of a peacemaker, and especially somebody who avoids all the wars that bipartisan Washington over decades has been incapable of refraining from pursuing.
My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. That's what I want to be, a peacemaker and a unifier.
I haven't heard inaugurated presidents speak that way. They vow to uphold the importance of American leadership in the world, which means military force and defending our allies. Trump is saying, my number one goal, at least in foreign policy, is to have my legacy be a peacemaker, somebody who avoids war like I did in my first term. I know there's a chance that the hostilities in Gaza can restart. Netanyahu sold this to his country by saying, oh, Trump promised me I could restart it. At the same time, there's been reporting from NBC News and other places that Steve Witkoff has been told to stay in the region and make sure this deal doesn't fall apart and that this war does not start again. It's clearly something Trump does not want. If you can't remember the last time you slept all night or got a healthy sleep or didn't feel stressed during the day, I really want to talk to you about CBD from CBD Distillery. They've got natural solutions, not pharmaceutical ones, natural ones for sleep and stress that people cannot stop raving about. Check out some of their 48,000 five-star reviews. Quote, the best sleep I've gotten in years. I wake up feeling refreshed and ready to go. And it's not just sleep. They have plant-based solutions to help with stress, with mood, with focus, even with types of pain, including after exercise. All of it is made with high-quality, clean, natural ingredients. CBD Distillery's targeted formulations are made from the highest quality clean ingredients. There's no fluff, there's no fillers, just pure, effective CBD solutions designed to help support your health. Look, there's a lot of CBD out there. Some of it's trustworthy, some of it's not. It's hard to know. I personally trust CBD Distillery. They've been sponsoring our show from almost the very beginning. We've heard great feedback. I really trust them for their commitment to quality. That's why they have over 2 million satisfied customers and offer a 100% back money guarantee. If you're still struggling with sleep, stress, other health concerns, maybe it's time to try something different than filling your cabinet with a bunch of prescriptions that your doctor gives you and products from Big Pharma. CBD from CBD Distillery. I have a 20% discount to get you started. Visit cbdistillery.com. Use the promo code Glenn for 20% off. That's cbdistillery.com. Promo code Glenn, cbdstory.com. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.